when you look at, as you said, the proportionality as it relates to women
That's right.
and men.
That's right.
That's a whole nother disturbing number.
It is, and women, unfortunately, being primary caregivers of minor children, being usually the sole provider in many, many households, especially in households that have maybe one parent home. And then today, you have women who are getting sentenced to double life plus 50, double the amount of men. So for the
Why
same
is that?
charges, I mean, I think it's just the same thing with sexism, misogyny. This shows up in every industry. I think the prison industrial complex is no different. And I think that what's happening is that they're just kidnapping mothers and women off the street and putting them in prison. And when we get there, we don't know how to fight.
But there will be people who say, listen, but you committed the crime.
Absolutely. I mean, there's levels of accountability that one must take. You know, for me, I had to take a level of accountability for the actions and the harm that I caused. But it's about the sentencing. You know, what's a just sentence? Should I have sat in prison for 20 years, for 50 years, for double life, for nonviolent charges? And then when we talk about violence versus nonviolence, you have women like Centoya, right? It's abuser violence. So we have women who are crying, who are pleading, who are asking for help. And then again, they have to protect themselves and their children. So how do we actually even define what violence is? How do we actually make sure that we are giving people the proper representation? I mean, it was great to see a prosecutor on here talking about that, but the power of the prosecutors and what they have and how they're the ones that are really determining the sentences of our people is completely disgusting.
So how do we affect change? How do, you know, I just saw a story recently on mothers who are being held, you know, without a trial yet, their children languishing and staying with grandparents and aunts, and everyone's trying to help. But again, how do we affect the proper change?
Right. So, I mean, for me, you know, there's that cliche, you know, you want to be the change, you have to be the change you want to see. So for me, through my experience and the things that I saw, knowing I could come home and do anything because of the support that I had, I organized and started my organization, the Ladies of Hope Ministries, to focus on helping women make sure they have access to education, spiritual empowerment, entrepreneurship, advocacy, and housing. But then we also help and we push legislation because there's the other piece. So we've passed 14 pieces of legislation across the country, making sure women have their dignity, and that's led by women who are directly impacted, women who've lived this experience of being in prison, making sure we're the ones that are changing laws so we can change the lives of the people.
And what you are saying is, listen, I am not saying that this person should not serve their time or pay for the crime. It is how much time and how women are being treated differently. That is the conversation. You don't want people skirting off for things they did. And I want people to be clear about that. But you don't want them to give more than the pound of flesh.
No, absolutely. And I mean, that's a great analogy, a pound of flesh. I mean, when you really think about that, that's really what's happening. And I mean, there's alternatives to incarceration. There's other ways that people can be redeemed and be held accountable other than warehousing people and sending them to prison, because in dark places, you cannot find light. And there's no way you can heal in a dark place. So if a person comes from violence, what do you think prison's going to do? It's going to beget more violence. So we have to find ways to change that.